Good morning. Thank you to our quartet, Julie Tanguay, Olivia Bassett-Kennedy, Kelly Anders, and our acting director of music ministries, Carter Smith. That was beautiful, so beautiful. Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Whether you're joining us live in person here in our sanctuary, watching from home nearby or from further away, or watching on demand in the days ahead, we are delighted that you've chosen to be together in community with one another, with us. Our community has been meeting continuously since 1865, a voice of Unitarian Universalism and progressive religious values here in the city of Ann Arbor, and carrying our influence, our message, our vision, our dreams further beyond, most especially in this time of digital participation. I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as senior minister, and alongside me in today's service are the Reverend Cassie Hartley, our executive minister, Stella Anderson, our acting director of spiritual growth and development, Allison Halerz, our pianist-in-residence, Mike Halerz, our technological consultant, the members of our quartet, representatives from our Chalice singers, and we have some special guests in our service today. We have Barbara Lynn with us, who I'll share more about and introduce more fully as our service continues. And we have Mark Jagner and Ruth Vail, co-chairs of our UUs for Justice in the Middle East group. Wherever you may be joining us from today, if you're in our live stream, we invite you to take just a moment and say hello, introduce yourself, share where you're tuning in from. And we trust that others that are there, more experienced members, our chat hosts, will greet you warmly in return. If you're with us in person and are newer to our community, at the conclusion of our service today, we invite you to join us in what's called the Jackson Chapel. It's the second right as you exit these double doors. In that space, there will be members of our community who will be available to answer questions about Unitarian Universalism, about our congregation more specifically, and help orient you to being with us. If you're newer and it's your second time joining us, please feel free to add that to the chat stream as well. I'm sure you'll get some warm shouts out. If you're watching on demand later on in the days ahead and are newer to our community, we invite you to please visit our website. On the homepage, you'll find a Newcomer Survey, very brief. If you take just a moment to fill that out, it'll help us get in touch with you and keep you apprised of upcoming events and happenings in our community. If we can provide any more in-depth personal assistance, answer specific questions you may have, please don't hesitate to contact our staff member, our coordinator for welcoming ministries, Hannah Hotchkiss, at hannah@uuaa.org. Hannah would be more than delighted to help you with any specific questions you may have as you're getting to know us. This Sunday's theme, building on an arc of several Sundays, we've been looking at various aspects of faith and faith formation. This Sunday, we're going to be looking more closely at faith and story. How do stories, narrative, all of that, how does that feed into, support our faith journey, create inspiration for us, guide us on those individual journeys, more as that theme continues to develop. I'd like to take a moment also just to share with you today some important updates to our community's COVID-19 health and safety protocols. Some of you may have seen the messaging coming out from our community a few days ago that contained a summary of these updates. Our county, Washtenaw County, this is such a positive development. I'm sure some of you have followed this. It's just in the past week or so, we have now fallen to less than a 3% positivity test rate for COVID-19 in our county. This is the first time we've been under 3% it's been a long time. So it's a very positive development for our community. In light of that, our congregation's COVID-19 advisory team has made some recommendations which we will be implementing effective April 1st. I'll first start off with what we're maintaining. We will be maintaining our community's covenantal expectation that all eligible congregants are fully vaccinated, including fully boosted, if you're participating in in-person activities in our congregation. We will be maintaining universal masking throughout our indoor spaces, with some exceptions that I'll speak to in a moment. We will be maintaining mandatory COVID-19 antigen testing for anybody appearing in the service who will appear without a face covering, without a mask. We will also maintain our commitment to multimodal access to our Sunday services and other important community gatherings, which empowers our members and friends to choose the engagement level and forms of engagement that best suit your personal health and safety needs. Alongside the maintenance of those things, we will be making optional masking outdoors. So in our outdoor space, you will have, as of April 1, the opportunity to be maskless or masked, depending on what you choose to do, what you need. We will be bringing back, as of 2 Sundays from now, so the first Sunday of April, communal hymn singing. It's a big deal. We haven't sung hymns together in more than 2 years. It's a big deal. Now, with masks on for the time being, but that's still nonetheless a very positive development and welcome by all of us. We will resume the offering of refreshments in our social hall and refreshments, snacks for the children in the SGD classes. So in those 2 designated spaces only, in the social hall and in the classrooms for the kids when the teachers offer snacks, we can temporarily remove our masks for the consumption of beverages or food. Universal masking throughout the building in all other spaces, please, that we are keeping that. Those are some of the bigger developments. As you can imagine, our COVID advisory team, continues to follow all the local health metrics and national and other developments very closely. So if something of concern develops, we will move nimbly towards the reinstatement of some of the safety measures we are moving towards relaxing. But for the time being, things do look like our local region and our country are definitely in a better footing. As our local health metrics have improved, we have been receiving more requests for in-person meeting space and opportunities for in-person events and activities. Such is possible. And we invite our community to just hold side by side with that our professional paid staffing is the thinnest it has ever been, the thinnest it's been in a long time. So out of necessity, we are moving towards a way of doing that in which we will be inviting all recognized UUA groups or groups that are organizing activities, committee meetings, events, to be responsible for all aspects of their in-person meeting, event, activity, whatever may be happening, which will include things like building open close, room setup, room cleanliness, both before the event or activity and afterwards, and being implementers of whatever our community's current COVID-19 health and safety precautions are. We are planning on developing guidance that will support lay leaders in undertaking and leading in-person activities with those responsibilities, and hope to have that guidance available in the weeks ahead. Now, as we move into a deeper time together of continued reflection and shared inspiration, time for centering, and a time for holding hope together, hope alive in our hearts, I invite you to find that deeper space of grounding, that deeper space of stillness, that place of wisdom that resides in each of us. May our time together today move deeply and well.
Good morning. So as we're moving further into our shared time together this morning, let us now turn to our chalice lighting. Each week we begin our time together by lighting a chalice that reminds us of our connections with one another. Whether here in this sanctuary, across the world, or at a later time, we can all be connected through the lighting of our chalices, the flame of which remind us of the spark of love, hope, and possibility that resides within each of our hearts. This morning, I'm pleased to invite Olivia Bassett-Kennedy to the chancel to light our chalice. And if you're joining this morning virtually via the live stream, I invite you to grab your chalice or a candle and join those who are here in this sanctuary in kindling a flame. If you are comfortable, I would also invite you to share in the live chat that you had lit your chalice as a way of connecting with others who are joining together this morning. And now, please join me in saying the words of our chalice lighting together. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Olivia. We are gathered together this morning in community. Our community is not bound together by one single belief or creed, but instead our community is bound together by the promises that we make about how we will be in relationship with each other. These promises strengthen the bonds of our community, and the spirit of these promises are captured in our community's covenant. Please join with me in saying these words together. The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth and love, and to help one another. Thank you.
Our story today is an adaptation of a 135-year-old short story by Leo Tolstoy, reimagined as a children's parable. It's a beautiful tale of a young boy's quest to live with purpose, compassion, and presence. The Three Questions, written and illustrated by John J. Muth. There once was a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the right way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. Nikolai's friends understood, and they wanted to help him. If only I could find the answers to my 3 questions, Nikolai continued, then I would always know what to do. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? Nikolai's friends considered his first question. Then Sonia the heron spoke. To know the best time to do things, one must plan in advance, she said. Gogol the monkey, who had been rooting through some leaves to find something good to eat, said, You will know when to do things if you watch and pay close attention. Then Pushkin the dog, who was just dozing off, rolled over and said, You can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack to keep watch and help you decide when to do things. For example, Gogol, a coconut is about to fall on your head. Nikolai thought for a moment. Then he asked his second question. Who is the most important one? Those who are closest to heaven, said Sonia, circling up into the sky. Those who know how to heal the sick, said Gogol, stroking his bruised noggin. Those who make the rules, growled Pushkin. Nikolai thought some more. Then he asked the third question. What is the right thing to do? Flying, said Sonia. Having fun all the time, laughed Gogol. Fighting, barked Pushkin right away. Then the boy thought for a long while. He loved his friends. He knew they were all trying their best to help him answer his questions. But their answers didn't seem quite right. Then an idea came to him. I know, he thought. I will ask Leo the turtle. He has lived a very long time. Surely he will know the answers I'm looking for. Nikolai hiked high up into the mountains where the old turtle lived all alone. When Nikolai arrived, he found Leo digging a garden. The turtle was old, and digging was hard for him. I have 3 questions, and I came to ask for your help, Nikolai said. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? Leo listened carefully, but he only smiled. Then he went on with his digging. You must be tired, Nikolai said at last. Let me help you. The turtle gave him his shovel and thanked him. And because it was easier for a young boy to dig than it was for an old turtle, Nikolai kept on digging until the rows were finished. But just as he finished, the wind blew wildly and rain burst from darkened clouds. As they moved toward the cottage for shelter, Nikolai suddenly heard a cry for help. Running down the path, he found a panda whose leg had been injured by a falling tree. Carefully, Nikolai carried her into Leo's house and made a splint for her leg with a stick of bamboo. The storm raged on, banging at the doors and windows. The panda woke up. "Where am I?" she said. "And where is my child?" The boy ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening. Pushing against the howling wind and drenching rain, he ran farther into the forest. There he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. The little panda was wet and scared, but alive. Nikolai carried her inside and made her warm and dry. Then he laid her in her mother's arms. Leo smiled when he saw what the boy had done. The next morning, the sun was warm, birds sang, and all was well with the world. The panda's leg was healing nicely, and she thanked Nikolai for saving her and her baby from the storm. At that moment, Sonia, Gogol, and Pushkin arrived to make sure everyone was all right. Nikolai felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends, and he had saved the panda and her child. But he also felt disappointed. He still had not found the answers to his 3 questions. So he asked Leo one more time. The old turtle looked at the boy. "But your questions have been answered," he said. "They have?" asked the boy. "Yesterday, if you had not stayed to help me dig my garden, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cries for help in the storm. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging the garden. The most important one at that moment was me, and the most important thing to do was to help me with my garden. Later, when you found the injured panda, the most important time was the time you spent mending her leg and saving her child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby, and the most important thing to do was to take care of them and make them safe. Remember then that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you are with, and the most important thing is to do good for the one who is standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in this world. This is why we are here. The end. Once a month, we invite congregational leaders to share their important work with the community. For this month's Social Justice Connection, I am pleased to welcome Mark Jagner and Ruth Vail, co-chairs of Ann Arbor UU's for Justice in the Middle East, to the podium.
Thank you, Stella, and good morning, everyone. Happy vernal equinox. We've all been looking forward to spring this year. I'm Mark Jagner. Ruth Vail and I are co-chairs of the Ann Arbor chapter of Unitarian Universalists for Justice in the Middle East. We are one of 26 chapters across the country that are part of the 50-year-old UU's for Justice in the Middle East organization. Our mission is to inform our community about the history and current situation in Palestine, Israel, and advocate for U.S. Middle East policies that respect human rights. We are motivated by the simple idea that lasting peace in the Holy Land is possible, but only when both Israeli Jews and Palestinians have freedom, security, and equality in their shared homeland. We advocate for ending the military occupation of Palestinian territories and for the rights of refugees. We support the Palestinian tradition of nonviolent resistance and condemn all acts of condemn all attacks on civilians by either Israelis or Palestinians. Over the past 20 years, we have hosted many inspiring Jewish and Palestinian speakers, conducted educational programs, and written letters to our congressional representatives.
As an example of working together to effect change, UU's for Justice in the Middle East led a coalition of social justice groups sponsoring a business resolution embodying human rights in our investment decisions at the UUA General Assembly, in 2020. This resolution directs the UU Common Endowment Fund to divest from corporations that are directly complicit in human rights violations and was adopted by a vote of 95%. Other sponsors included Black Lives of UU, UU's, UU Refugee and Immigrant Services and Education, UU Ministry for the Earth, UU Peace Ministry Network. The Common Endowment Socially Responsible Investment Strategy also screens out corporations involved in fossil fuel, tobacco, and weapons industries. The UUAA Board of Trustees recently brought our congregation's investments in line with our values by moving them into the UU Common Endowment Fund.
So what can our congregation do to help the Palestinians in their struggle for freedom and equality? In February of 2019, the Ann Arbor UUJME group submitted a petition to the UUAA Board of Trustees, signed by 72 members of the congregation, asking for a vote on a congregational resolution endorsing the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement for Palestinian human rights. Input from the community made it clear that the congregation was not ready to vote on a resolution at the June 2019 congregational meeting. The Board of Trustees and leaders of UUJME agreed to pause work on a Palestinian human rights resolution while the community focused on completing the Vision 2050 process. After consulting with the UUAA board president and vice president, we agreed that what is really needed is a process of learning together and deciding what actions to take as a community to support the Palestinian people. If the congregation decides to move forward with a resolution supporting Palestinian human rights, members of the community will have the opportunity to provide input on the content and the wording of the resolution.
We kicked off our first learning opportunity last month with a panel of Jewish activists who shared their personal stories of what led them to become advocates for Palestinian rights. Over 50 members of the congregation participated. The video will be available for people who missed it. And now we have another great learning opportunity for you today after the service. An exhibit entitled The Promised Land, Jewish Museum of the Palestinian Experience is on display in the social hall. We will be offering more opportunities over the coming months to learn about the Israel-Palestine issue and engage in thoughtful dialogue where all views will be heard and respected. We hope that you will join us on this learning journey and encourage you also to do your own research. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Ruth. And thank you to UUJME for your efforts to bring about a more just and peaceful world. I feel inspired every day bearing witness to our community's commitment to peace, justice, and love. One of the ways that we demonstrate our commitment each week is through the spiritual practice of our offering. It's a reminder that when each of us gives of our time, energy, money, talents, and presence, we can create a community that can do so much more together than we ever could alone. If you'd like to give to support the work of our congregation, you can text UUAA to 73256. You can go to uuaa.org/giving, or of course you can leave checks or cash in the baskets as you exit. However you give, thank you for your generosity and for your commitment to a brighter future that we're building together. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, wherever you may be, and say with us the words of dedication. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you. Our reading this morning comes from the Christian Scriptures, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 through 46. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Thus ends our reading. I invite you to join me now in a time of meditation or reflection. Let's take a moment to get comfortable wherever you're seated. Feel the ground beneath you supporting you. Do what you need to do to help yourself feel centered and grounded. And let's take a couple deep breaths together. Let us enter now into a time of shared silence.
In recent weeks, we have been reflecting together on the topic of faith and faith formation. In particular, how Unitarian Universalism's approach to spirituality, religiosity, it encourages us to go deep within ourselves in arriving at a highly personal, highly individualized understanding of what it means to be human. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What are we here to do? What difference are we here to make? In that highly individualized approach, there's no expectation that my answers are identical to your answers at all. And the journey, that highly individualized sense of understanding, which is sometimes referred to as a personal credo, it's nested within various understandings or lenses. So we've drawn in recent weeks on the Reverend Richard Gilbert's framework, which is called Building Your Own Theology. And at the center, you've got the personal credo, and you go out one level, and you've got the 7 principles, our ethical statements of what it means to be Unitarian Universalist. You go another level out, and nested around all of that are the sources, what we turn to for inspiration as Unitarian Universalists, which includes many, an infinite number of sources, things like art, music, science, scriptures of all kinds, stories, fiction and nonfiction, poetry, literature, and the list goes on. And then even around that, another layer that contains all of that, that holds all of that, higher, overarching values such as love, compassion, caring, the call to goodness. It's by way of illustrating how we Unitarian Universalists can approach that journey that today we reflect on the role of narrative and story in being one of the sources, one of the things that can help inspire us and can frame and hold our journeys as Unitarian Universalists. Because our journeys are so individualized, when we get together and we share any of that at the collective level, at the level of community, we do so not from a place of, let me listen for what I'm going to debate you about, or how I'm going to dissect how you've arrived at the wisdom that informs your life, or how my understanding of truth and what it means to be human is clearly superior than yours. We don't do that. That's actually the opposite of being together in community. Those things harm community. They don't help community. We view it as a gift. It's a gift. When any one of us shares our hard-won personal experience of what it means to be human, of what our sense of being a good person is, and the things that illustrate that and bring that alive for us, it is a gift. And so it's in that spirit of receiving a heartfelt gift that I invite you to warmly welcome into our pulpit this morning someone who likely doesn't need introduction, a longtime congregant, friend to many of us, a beautiful human being in our midst, Barbara Lynn. Would you give a warm round of welcome to Barbara?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have long believed that religion is the stories we tell each other to make sense out of life and to guide us to the good. The uncharted journey, the prophetic voice, the yearning toward the infinite, from these we build our narrative of faith, our story. We Unitarian Universalists have a shared story that sustains us. It tells of our forebears who rejected the Trinity and embraced universal salvation, who turned from a fixed creed and elevated covenant as our way of being together. We have 7 principles to guide us, and we honor the many sources that feed our differing beliefs. We buttress our faith with ritual and practices that name and reinforce our shared bonds and strengthen our life together in community.
Every week we light the chalice, recite our covenant. We have yearly celebrations as well, our flower and water communions, to name just two. Building beloved community is both a part of our story and the direct result of the rituals that have arisen from that story. Our UU faith invites us to find and explore our own story, as articulated in our third and fourth principles, calling us to spiritual growth and to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We are encouraged to write our own credos, to discover and follow the practices that will build and challenge our faith, and to embark on our spiritual journey. Your path may be different from mine, yet we undertake our journeys together in the spirit of community that is our shared UU story. The language of our stories may differ, so we are called upon to be multilingual. To honor each other's faiths, to honor each other's truths, is to embrace each other's words. I am a UU Christian. I embrace the story of Jesus, a Jew from Nazareth. An agnostic seeker, when I joined this congregation, my journey led me to what I call a plausible God. God not as supernatural being, but rather God as presence, a presence I experience. But my path didn't end there, and neither did my journey. Slowly, I realized that the metaphors of the Christian story were speaking to me, and sure enough, step by step, my path delivered me to Jesus. I had found my faith story. This was a double homecoming, both a revisiting of the Christian roots of my childhood and a return to the well of our earliest UU forebears, all of whom were Christian. These ancestors joined me on my path. I am in good company. The Christian story is a story with a capital S. It comes to us rich in symbolism and metaphor. The Bible is filled with unbelievable events and impossible claims. Did Jesus really raise Lazarus from the dead? And what does it mean to say that he did? Did Jesus walk on water, still the storm? Could he heal with a touch or even just a word? Is he up on his throne, even as we speak, gathering in his sheep, as we found him in today's reading? Where is the truth in these stories, and how do we find it? Reading the Bible is a cherished spiritual practice of mine, one that I labor over and struggle with. I wrestle with stories that quite simply beggar belief, interpreting them with a critical eye, through, if you will, a UU lens. As a UU, bound by no creed, I am as free to doubt a text as I am to celebrate it. Often, I do both. My UU lens invites me to read the Bible non-literally. It is my view that for believers and non-believers alike, the Bible is best read in this way, probed for story and meaning, not for literal truth. As biblical scholar John Dominic Crossan has said, it is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. Let's leave biblical literalism to the fundamentalists. In my most recent credo, I addressed the metaphors of the Christian story that called to me on my journey. I speak of the comfort I find in the incarnation as a representation of God dwelling among us as one of us. I celebrate the resurrected Christ as the divine spark within and surrounding us. The incarnation and the resurrection are mysterious events. I make no claim to believe in them. I say instead that I take comfort in and celebrate them. I adopt these stories, not because they are literally true, but because they are charged with meaning. Peer into its mysteries with a steady gaze, and a faith story can bring to light meaning and healing and wholeness. The Gospels are stories written decades after Jesus' death. The evangelists were neither journalists nor historians. They were storytellers, myth makers, and the myth they were making was Jesus the Christ. Jesus too told stories, parables spun by him to illustrate a teaching, like the Good Samaritan, or today's passage about the wayward goats. The Gospels offer up stories within stories, like nesting dolls waiting for us to unlock and reveal them down to the tiniest one. We are in the world of story, looking for truth. So let's turn to our sheep, shall we? Today's passage is known as the Judgment of the Nations, and indeed, in the Methodist Church of my childhood, the judgment loomed large. Even as we celebrated the kindnesses granted to the least of these, we were still left to grapple with the ultimate fate of the sheep and the goats. To recap, Jesus is separating the sheep who fed the hungry from the goats who did not. The sheep are raised to what we would traditionally think of as heaven, while the goats are cast into the fire, what we take to be hell. This is not, on the face of it, a pleasant story. And right from the start, it offends our universalism. We don't believe in hell. But suppose the story is not primarily about judgment. Suppose the hell depicted here is a rhetorical device, hyperbole, intended to catch our attention, just as Luke's angels singing in the skies over Bethlehem are themselves a rhetorical device. I don't for one moment believe that actual angels serenaded the shepherds. Luke put them there to signal that this birth was important. This Jesus was somebody. To fill the sky with a choir of angels is like telling your story in all caps. Likewise, when Jesus conjures up the fires of hell, he is all but commanding us to sit up and listen. With this in mind, we can allow the punishment to fall into the background. Later, we will take a closer look at the favor bestowed upon the sheep. But the hellfire part of the story has done its job and gotten our attention. We set it aside. As UUs, I will say again, we can do this. As Universalists who don't believe in hell, we must. So now we turn to the actions of our sheep and our goats. What is Jesus asking of them? Quite simply, did they feed Jesus when he was hungry? Did they welcome him as a stranger, clothe him, take care of him, visit him in prison? As we have seen, the sheep did, and the goats did not. Yet neither the sheep nor the goats recall seeing Jesus in distress, And Jesus reveals to them that the hungry and the sick, the imprisoned and the stranger, all are stand-ins for Jesus himself. Thus the lesson and the lovely famous line, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." The poor, the oppressed, the imprisoned, immigrants, these are the marginalized of our time too. Jesus is announcing his presence in them. When we respond to their needs, we are honoring the Christ in them, or, if you prefer, the divine spark within. And here we have landed, beautifully and gracefully, right onto our first principle, where we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. To me, Jesus' claim that he is present in the marginalized, and our belief that worth and dignity inhere in everyone, are two sides of the same coin. Indeed, they are identical. If these were UU sheep and goats, Jesus would be asking if we had lived into our covenant. Are you beginning to see how easy it is for me to be a UU Christian? I am free to interact with my story, to be critical, analytical, even playful. I can suspend disbelief and know that that is what I am doing. I can question and doubt. No one will cast me into the fiery pit. Again and again, when I hold Jesus' words up to the light, I discover that his teachings are in accord with our most cherished values. The notion that Unitarian Universalism is somehow post-Christian or even anti-Christian is misguided. Jesus is one of us. This is not to say that UU should be Christian. Of course not. Christianity is but one of the paths open to us. What I am saying is that the Christian path is wide open to those UUs, such as myself, who have come upon it. Besides, you don't need to be Christian for a Christian story to speak to you any more than I need to be, say, pagan to learn from and honor that faith. Let me put it another way. If Unitarian Universalism is a tree, UU Christianity rises from our main trunk to become one of many branches, a branch still yielding fruit. UU Christianity is a living piece of our living tradition. No matter where you perch, it is the tree as a whole that shelters you. But our sheep are not done with us yet. They still have one last lesson to impart. As we step into the text one last time, I will be talking directly about God and what God asks of us. Now, I know that many of us don't believe in God, and for some of you, the very word is a stumbling block. I invite you to suspend disbelief. I do that myself, as I have just said. The willing suspension of disbelief is part of my UU lens, especially useful when I approach the miracles. I am asking that you suspend disbelief just as you would when you watch Hamlet on the stage. We are in the realm of story, and God has a part in the play. Let's take another look at Jesus' interrogation of his sheep, which is to say, let's look again at what Jesus asks of us. We are not confronted with a long list of sins and failings. Jesus wants to know one thing and one thing only. Did we reach out to the marginalized, visit and welcome them, give them food, comfort, care? Tellingly, Jesus does not inquire about, say, our gender identity. He doesn't want to know whom we love. He doesn't ask where we fall on any spectrum. He doesn't even want to know our beliefs. There is no Christian checklist here. Simply put, when we feed the hungry, when we live into our covenant, we are lifted up and celebrated. Period. God expects compassion of us, and when we are compassionate, God accepts us as we are. I love reading the Bible. It is like entering the mystery as an acolyte and working an intricate master puzzle. Look how far we've come. We've gone from watching Jesus throw some poor sad sack goats into hell to seeing him as the very embodiment of our first principle. We have broomed hell right out of the story. We've seen that when we act as the sheep do, Jesus gathers us in, no matter who we are or what we believe. We are called to be social justice warriors, and when we rise to that call, we are ushered into God's kingdom. I'll say it again. God expects compassion of us, and when we are compassionate, God accepts us as we are. I bring my whole self to my story. I inhabit it, and it in turn enters me. I encounter God and listen prayerfully for God's voice. I mine the Bible for truth that is rarely literal, but always enlightening. I share my story with you today, not to convert you, but to give you yet another view of the glorious diversity of our faith. In beloved community, we travel together, atheist, theist, Buddhist, humanist, pagan, Jew, and on and on and on. You too have a faith story, a story uniquely your own. It is waiting for you if you haven't already found it. As you follow the path it lays out for you, your fellow UUs walk with you in spirit. I walk with you. May your faith story nourish you and bless you. May your path open up before you, and may your journey bring you home. Amen.
What a beautiful message as we live into love, compassion, the spirit of justice. The universe, in turn, gathers us in. It embraces us. It accepts us exactly as we are. Thank you, Barbara Lynn, for such a gorgeous message. Would you rise in body or spirit? And let's also give Barbara another round of appreciation. We, the worship team, we want to extend a special invitation to each and every one of you here, each and every one tuning in, whether it's live streaming now or in the days ahead. What is your personal credo? And what illustrates it? What brings it alive? What gives it depth and meaning? What makes it vibrant and rich and meaningful? We each have these understandings of what it means to be human. Take a stab, write it down, articulate it. Let it be an expression of your heart, your passion, and your commitment to what it means to be good and caring and loving and impactful in the world. Write your personal credo. Write the sermonette or sermon that would illustrate it, that would go along with it, and then send it to us. Send it to worship team at UUAA.org. Let it be your finest piece of writing, something you would want to bequeath to the world. And if you send it to us and it's gorgeous, we will find an opportunity. We will find an opportunity for you to do what Barbara did today. Go forth now into this new week, mindful of the universe's embrace and this community's embrace, which envelops and holds you. An unconditional love which only has that slight little bit of hope, longing, yearning, expectation that you do the same. That you unconditionally express your love and compassion and longing for justice and equity in the world around you. Bring it alive generously and watch the universe embrace you back. Go in love and peace until we are together again. Amen.